Ready to go?
We're ready.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. So for those of you that took the time and made the investment to come and join us today for this lunch and learn and learn a little bit more about neighborhood finance, thank you for investing time. 44 years ago today, I was in a different field. I started my first day of boot camp in the United States Air Force 44 years ago today. So yeah, kind of crazy, right? And then when I got out after my 4 years, I came right into mortgage. So mortgage and finance. So we're going to talk a little bit today. You're going to get a 2-hour continuing ed credit for attending this today. I see that you guys have got made your rounds for lunch. So there's plenty of food. Help yourselves. Go ahead and we'll go to the next slide. So we moved. You guys know that we moved. We're no longer on 6th Avenue. So we are right over here at 4908 Franklin Avenue. We moved a year ago, Memorial Day. And then once we moved in, it took us about till the first week of December. We were going through a remodel of the building pretty much from the front of that entryway that you see in our building about 2/3 of the way back through there. So we are in a new office space. We've got plenty of parking. That's no longer an issue. We've got a lot of office space inside and room to grow. So we were excited about that. Our Cedar Rapids office, we do have an office there. They are actually in the Collins community building in the lower level. And Collins actually donated our office space. So they donate our office space for us to operate there in Cedar Rapids. So that's one of our investor partners in Cedar Rapids. Our lending teams here, just up front, we've got 3 loan originators here in Des Moines: Richard Cook, Bridget Robinson, and Carrie Vitzum. Carrie used to be a realtor years ago, and Bridget is kind of our community outreach and DEI loan originators. She does a lot of stuff with our Journey to Homeownership program, which we'll touch on a little bit later today. And then we've got Special Programs Coordinator Kim Peterson. She takes care of all of our down payment assistance, special programs. When we launched the down payment program a year ago for Polk County, Kim was in charge of that, coordinated that side with me. We've got a processor here in Des Moines, and then our closer, we close loans at our office, and that's John Fuson. So that's our team. And then, so what is NFC? What do we do? Well, all the way back in like 1989, 1990, there was a housing study that was done in Des Moines. And it was determined back then that some of the neighborhoods and communities were lacking reinvestment. And we didn't want neighborhoods to go into further decline, eroding condition, property values, tax base, things like that. So we were created back in 1990 as a licensed lender with a local nonprofit. And then, so what happens is, since that time, we have served more than 8,000 customers in loans. $70.1 million in forgivable money has been pumped back into local neighborhoods for repairs and improvements to homes. So our mission is quite simple. It's neighborhood revitalization. We don't do any other loan unless it involves renovation work. So that is what we do. We do purchases, we do full refinances, and we do secondary home improvement type loans. We get our funding from the city, the county, local investor partners, and we are also a community development finance institution, or otherwise known as a CDFI. We're a chartered member of Neighbor Works of America, and so some of the funding that we get for some of our programs comes through the CDFI because it's registered through the Department of Treasury. And so that is kind of where we get our funding. The city and the county here, actually, we operate under what's called the 2080 agreement. And it's basically an agreement that we have with the city and the county. So they basically invest $1 million a year for us to be able to use on that forgivable money when people do things to their houses. So that's where the forgivable funds come from. Everything else, for every dollar that we get from public dollars through the city and the county, we return $1.71 on that investment. We also leverage now nearly almost $11 of other federal and private capital to do what we do. So that we really stretch money as far as we can stretch it, but we pull in a lot of other resources. So that just give you a little bit of flavor and an idea of what we do. We go through what we call phase offerings. So a couple years ago, we entered into our 20th phase offering here in Des Moines. And it's basically where then our local investor partners, local banks, credit unions, whatever, they basically give us the lending capital to be able to lend money. Sometimes we sell direct to Fannie Mae on the loans that we can sell when we're their first mortgage liens. For those that we can't, they're portfolioed with our investor pool. All of our loans get serviced by Iowa Bankers Mortgage Corp right here out of Johnston. So the loans never get sold, they're always serviced here. So that's a little bit of history on kind of what we are, who we do, how we get our funding. Any questions on that? I want to keep this interactive as I can today because I'm going to share a ton of information with you. So here, I'm sorry?
I'm going to get copies.
She's got a copy of the PDF, so for the presentation.
That'd be awesome.
Yep. So our total impact is been over $634 million since fiscal year 2003 to 2023. So that's just in the last 20 years. We've done almost 3,000 homeowners new, over 3,100 homes preserved. So just a little bit of statistical data for you there. Go on, next slide. And again, we just had an open house for our new office, so a little bit of the same things here, but look at that ratio, 80-to-1 investment per dollar of capital that we get. So we have to leverage a lot of other funds to be able to deliver programs and do the things that we do in the community and the neighborhood. Okay. So what programs are available? So right now, we refer to it as our NSC Advantage program. That is for doing home purchases, which is what we're going to focus on today. We're going to focus heavily on just the purchase program. We do full-blown refinances. We do secondary home improvement loans. We have an exterior-only program. So with borrowers that are already living in the houses, and we're doing exterior-only repairs, and that could be roofs, entry doors, garages, sidewalks, windows, decks, whatever. We can finance up to $30,000 on that loan, and we use CDFI money for that program that we lend on, so we select our interest rates. And our interest rates on that are either 2 or 4%. So if the household income is below 80% of median income limits, they're going to get a 2% interest rate, and we've done that and designed it in a way that we want to make things affordable for borrowers. So we try to create affordability. And today, we have to do that.
What's the term on that?
I'm sorry?
What's the term? How long alone?
On which one?
On the one that you said you can pick your own rates.
On this, well, you can't pick your own rate. It's determined by household income.
Okay, but I thought you said you can pick your own. Maybe I misunderstood that.
On exterior only repairs for somebody that already lives in the home and wants to do things to the house, we can finance up to $30,000 on that program at an interest rate of either 2 or 4%, depending on the income. And so that's what we use with that particular program. We also have an Energy Advantage deferred loan program, which we've leaned into real heavy. We're going to be talking about that a little bit more today. You know, people don't think of their homes as healthy living spaces, healthy environments. So there are things that happen in the home, you know, radon gas, which you can't see. You might have a real leaky or drafty home where the air exchange rate isn't good. That can cause health issues, asthma, different things. If you've got, for those of you that got gas stoves, you might be emitting low levels of CO2 into the home that keep making people sick. So there's a lot of different things that we do with the energy space right now to where we want to create property resiliency. So we want a healthy home environment, but we also want to make that home as efficient as we possibly can to help reduce and lower the energy cost and make sure that systems and things are functioning in the home as they should. And then the last thing down here is ITIN. Who knows what an ITIN loan is? Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. So for those here that do not have, I would say DACA applicants. So we have approved through our board to launch an I-10 lending program. And that is going to be a first mortgage only program. So it'll be used for purchase, full refinance, or refinance contract for deeds. And right now, it is with the attorneys just to get the final sign-offs and approvals. From there, once we've got the offering out to our investor pool to get the capital raised to be able to lend, we're going to launch the program. So hopefully that's going to get launched here maybe in the fourth quarter of this year, but we're close to getting that done. So those are our lending programs and what we do here at Neighborhood Finance. So all of our loans, when you're talking about forgivable money, so all of our loans have a repayable loan paired with a forgivable loan. That forgivable note has no interest, it has no payment. Borrowers get credited up front for that loan forgiveness. So when we're building in repairs or improvements as a cost to the loan, we combine them in with the purchase, and they get up to the first $10,000 forgiven regardless of income when they use this program when we finance that purchase. Okay, if we don't and they come back later, the forgiveness doesn't work the same way, and we'll get into that in a little bit here too. But then it's a 5-year subsidy, so it's forgivable after they've lived in the house for 5 years. We release that forgivable note and it goes away for good. If they sell 3 years after living in the house, then we'll recapture 2 of the 5 years back, and maybe the new owner will have the ability to use those funds. Those subsidies are available to be used on properties once every 10 years. So it doesn't follow the borrower, it follows the property. We've got borrowers that purchase homes in neighborhoods that we serve. They move, they go buy another house in a different neighborhood we serve, they come back and we can use that if they've not used the subsidy on that property before. Drake neighborhood, especially. So that subsidy is doubled if we're taking a multifamily house back to a single family. We've done several of those, but there's more expense involved in converting that back. So instead of getting the first 10 forgivable over 5 years, they can get 20 forgivable over 10. And so we've actually got one of those going right now. Cedar Rapids, our forgivable money is actually $15,000, not 10. That was just how the city decided they wanted to fund the program.
Can you combine NFC money with Invest DSF money?
Yes, and I'll talk about that a little bit too. Yep. When we structure our loans, all of our loans are considered 80-15-5s. And what that means is that we always have a 5% equity stake in a property. We finance the primary loan up to the first 80%. And then if we have to finance more than that, then that secondary, that other 15% up to 95 is done on a tandem second mortgage. And that tandem second is done on 10 years at a 2% interest rate. Okay, I'm going to get into a slide here in a little bit that kind of shows you how we build that out and how a borrower benefits from that as well. So eligibility, they just has to be in an NFC approved lending neighborhood. So if you go to our website and you look at our lending map and pop in an address, it's going to drop a pin on the neighborhood of where the property's at. So as long as it's in one of the colored areas of that map in the neighborhood, that's where we can lend. Property, again, they can use up to the 10,000 once every 10 years. There are no income limits for that program when they use it on the purchase. So that is an important thing to note. The other thing is that if our average renovation cost right now on a home is $29,700, that was the average money that people put back into homes for repairs and improvements across the board. So when you look at that, they're not limited to 10,000 repairs. That's just the maximum forgivable amount of money that they're going to get. We also have up to $2,500 that they can get towards their bottom line to use closing costs, whatever it is, if it's in a low to moderate income census tract or that household is below 80% of median income limits. That too is forgivable over 5 years. Down payment assistance programs, those are all income driven. And so we've got a couple of different programs that we participate in at NFC. We've got our own neighborhood reinvest down payment program. We've got Federal Home Loan Bank. We've got Journey to Homeownership. We don't participate in IFA. IFA does not buy renovation loans, and we have trouble meeting the CLTV limits, so we haven't found a way that we can work with that program yet. See, maximum loan amounts, don't worry about that. That number is there. Basically, it's a lending limit that's been set for our underwriters. So anything that goes over that, we just have to take it to a residential loan committee for the loan committee to review and approve. So that's just a self-imposed underwriting restriction for our underwriter. Okay. Typical loans, this might have changed a little bit just because of what has happened in the market with, the increase in the home values. But typically, if you get anything under 200, 250, you're not finding much out there that doesn't need work of some kind. And so that's where we kind of come in. Our maximum debt ratio is 43%. The CLTV, again, if we go over that 105%, and the way that that's calculated, if I have a loan here at 80%, I've got a tandem second at 15, I've got 95% of that value already tied up. But when I start adding in the forgivable loan subsidies, the down payment programs, all those things, if those things exceed 105% of the value, I can't sell those to Fannie Mae. Our investor pool carries those loans, and we carry those internally in-house. FICO scores typically 660, so those have been reduced. Our loans perform very well. Our delinquencies normally run between 1.4 and right now I think they're about 2.3, 2.4%. They're up a little bit, but it's kind of followed what's happening nationally. But we're still in really good position with our loans performing well. I've not had loss here since I've been with NFC. And I don't think we've had a loss in almost 15 years. So we do really well with the loans performing, and a lot of that can be tied back to the education that we do in the home buyer education requirements that we use as well. Anything that's below 660 credit score, not to say that we can't do them. We just send them to residential loan committee. If Fannie Mae comes back and says it's ineligible, if it's Fannie Mae approved eligible, then they don't need to go to committee. We will honor those approvals. We've also got like an alternative underwriting method that we basically set criteria for people that don't meet those requirements. And so I think the lowest credit score that I have done on a purchase is like a 592. So we look at things a little bit different. We're always looking for ways to see if we can make that loan work. So they might go through a couple different levels, but that's kind of what we do with those things. Down payment requirement. So 5% of the purchase price, there's always a 5% equity investment. Borrowers have to put in at least 1 to 3% of their own money. It used to be 3% until this last phase offering. We want them to have some skin in the game. We find out when borrowers got some skin of their own in the game, they got something to lose. They perform better. But what we did was, for those borrowers that have a 680 credit score or higher, and they pay current rent, as long as that mortgage payment doesn't exceed 150% of the current rent payment, we can qualify them with just 1% of their own down payment money. The rest of the down payment money then can come from a qualified gift, or it can come from down payment assistance if they qualify to use those programs. The alternative credit, again, there, I'm not going to go through this a lot, but that basically, things don't fit those things. If their criteria fits inside this box, then we just get residential loan committee to sign off of it, and they'll approve it if they meet that criteria. It is an owner-occupied only program. Can't do it for non-owner occupants. Here's a copy of our lending map. So if you look up here, everything that basically is in green, oops, I'm gonna zoom back out there. Yep, everything that's in green up here on the map is areas that we can lend in. These things that you see that are in the dark green outlines, those are special investment district certificates, and that is Invest DSM. So those are the neighborhoods and the areas that Invest DSM lends in. They're going to expand a little bit in a couple of the neighborhoods, but that's not going to be released until September. And we'll get into how that works with that. But I will just say this. InvestDSM is not a lender. It is a source of funds. So borrowers still have to find somebody that finances that. We partner with InvestDSM to do that.
Those are matching funds.
I'm sorry?
Okay, match funds.
Well, no, it's not a matching fund program. They have tiering of forgiveness. So when we're capped at our 10,000, we'll just kind of stay here. When we're capped at our 10,000 in forgivable money, based on the type of repairs or improvements that they're making using the InvestDSM program, InvestDSM program has some little bit more stringent guidelines as far as the quality of the improvement that they're putting into the property. So for example, somebody that's doing a kitchen remodel, and they're not going to pay if you're going to put in a Formica countertop. They're only going to reimburse if you're going to put in a stone or higher quality countertop. So they've got construction standards, but they have different tiers of funding. So based on the size and the scope of the project, we might have a borrower that can get $35,000 in money to put towards the project to offset it. So what happens is that we have to partner with that department because they fund everything. When they come to NFC for the loan, what we're going to do, we set the loan up the way that we normally do with up to the first 10,000 forgivable towards the repairs and improvements. Once the project is completed and everything is done, we will send all that documentation to InvestDSM. They send a check to NFC, and then what happens is that we pay off the 10,000 forgivable that we used because they won't let us double dip on the program. That means that benefit has been restored and that borrower can use it for future use down the road. They don't have to wait 10 years. Then the additional money over and above the 10 goes towards reducing their principal balance. So once we get that and it reduces the principal balance, then we will also pay for that borrower to recast that mortgage payment over the life of the loan. So in simple terms, that's how it works, but they have an inspection to do. We've got bids that we've got to get coordinated. So it's just a layer. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna recap that in a different way to make sure I understood it. So let's say all said and done, the house is gonna be worth $250. But the list price is $200. So then you loan at $250, is that right? And then 10,000 comes from NFC, leaving 240, right? And then 40,000 comes from InvestDSM, is that right? And then like
Kind of, sort of.
okay.
So
This is all a lot of layers.
Yeah.
And this isn't even to like not to mention all the complication of getting all these bids before you write an offer on a house that likely has already been.
InvestDSM is kind of tougher to do on the purchase side just because there's so many moving parts and pieces anyway. When you involve them up front, it gets to be a little tough.
Okay.
You just need more time to put things together. But when you're looking at how we structure the loan, we can lend up to 95% of the lesser of two things: the purchase price plus the cost of the improvements, or the after improved appraised value, whichever's less. So you might have things that you're doing to the house that are repairs that aren't necessarily going to add value back to the house. So what we have to make sure we're doing is you don't want to pay top dollar in the market for a house when you got all this work that needs to be done and you're not adding value to it.
Right.
Okay. So as long as that appraisal comes back and those two numbers are within 10,000 of one another, then what happens is that borrower doesn't have anything more that they're going to need to bring to the table. Okay. And sometimes if we get down payment assistance and things in, if there's a different gap, let's just say that we're 250 all in and our appraisal comes in at 225. Well, then my 80% of my loan is based off of the 225, and then I can go up to the other 15%. So the rest of that gap has to be covered by the forgivable money, down payment assistance, whatever it is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, that makes sense. So if somebody was going to buy a home in your lending map and in the InvestDSM neighborhoods, let's say a house in the Drake neighborhood, what would be like order of steps that they do? obviously get pre-approved.
They need to get
here.
pre-qualified
Yeah.
before even starting their
Of
search.
course.
If they know they're gonna be here and what they're looking for,
Right.
get pre-qualified, and then once we get something executed where we've got a purchase agreement in place, we need to get that borrower because they need to apply through Invest DSM.
Okay.
So they're a small department as well. They've got other projects they do outside of this with block challenge grants and all kinds of things. So we just really need to work close with them on getting the inspections coordinated, so that we know what's going to be required to be done. And then once we are able to get the bid details secured from that borrower and identify and design that scope of work, we're going to get that over to Invest DSM for them to approve. And then they send us a letter basically saying, hey, we're approving this. It fits within whatever tier. Here's the subsidy amount that Invest DSM is going to allow this borrower to use.
Okay.
And then so what happens is when we get that amount, that's just something that we track internally. They don't get credit for that full amount up front.
Okay.
Okay. They get credit for our money up front.
Okay.
Okay.
So then if we were writing an offer in this scenario, would you recommend asking for a longer inspection period so that we have plenty of time to get bids?
Especially just depending on what you're doing and the condition of the
Okay.
house. The condition of the house is going to dictate so many things.
Sure.
So in all my years of doing lending, I always look at these things two different ways. I say you got a borrower profile and you got a property profile. Sometimes you're dealing with a lot of stuff on both ends, and those things can kind of get a little bit more complicated. If I've got a good borrower that's responsive, on board, gets what we're laying down and follows directions, we can work with the property piece. So it's just a matter of getting all those things coordinated. We do have a preferred vendor that we use. So I don't know, you guys, Kenny Cost Large, but any of you guys know Kenny?
Yeah.
Prime Home Upkeep. So they are a preferred contractor vendor, and we've had great results with them. They're timely, they're prompt, they do good work. But borrower has the option. They can either use a preferred vendor or they can use their own registered contractors. So by using the preferred vendor, it takes out a lot of the stress and the busy work of them trying to get contractors involved, get bids secured, get them in. So once we identify what we're doing in a project, we want to get all the bids in at the same time, because if they're just mailed in, every time I get a bid, I have to change a loan amount. I've got to redisclose. I have to get it re-underwritten. So it's just best that once we do and we've identified that work scope, we get them all in at the same time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. Can we move on from that for a minute? You got enough information on that? We can come back to it later.
Golden.
Okay. Perfect.
Terry,
Yeah.
just a quick mention about Windsor Heights, so.
Oh, yeah, go back to that stream. So the yellow spot over here, that is West Des Moines. This thing here from Grand Avenue and Railroad over to 63rd, that's historic West Des Moines there. There are additional matching funds that we can get from the home improvement program and down payment that we can layer in with all of our programs as well. So we do that stuff in West Des Moines. This is Urbandale. This area up here just got added. This is our little piece of Windsor Heights. We are almost out of money. So we've been working on a project with these Windsor Park townhomes over here. And we're getting all of the exteriors and everything redone for all those owners. But Windsor Heights has not provided 28E money for us to continue lending. I've got like $18,000 left. So once those things are spoken for, if they don't renew and continue to fund some of the stuff for the forgivable loans, we probably won't be able to lend in Windsor Heights.
The city council.
Correct. Correct, because that's where the funding comes from for the forgivable money. Okay? All right. Down payment assistance programs. So here's a few of them. Federal Home Loan Bank, it's up to $15,000. Those can get a little tricky. There's actually 2 people in the entire state that process all Federal Home Loan Bank down payment assistance applications for lenders across the state that participate. So when you have something that we're working with Federal Home Loan Bank on, when money's available, we're looking at probably at least 30 days just to get an answer back from them, even on a first look. So money goes really quick. I think the last time they released money, they do it at $2 million a pop. It was gone in 11 minutes.
Wow.
But it's $15,000. It's forgivable money. First time home buyers, household incomes below 80%. Not just the borrower. It's people in the household that are over age 18 that have an income in the household, regardless if they're on the loan or not. So that is how household income works, and it's different from qualifying income, which is just the borrowers that are on them. Okay. But we do participate in that when money's available. And anything that we do with these programs, they can all be layered. And I'll share a story with you here in a little bit on, what an impact sometimes these things do. Journey to homeownership. So this was launched about 3 years ago. And so when we hired Bridget Robinson, Bridget came in. She was our community outreach DEI loan originator. She went in and she works with DMPS. She works with United Way. She works with local churches, employers. We launched and we raised capital as part of the One Economy report. We had a really big issue here in Des Moines with disparate lending, where homeownership levels of African Americans were really low. So what we did is we wanted to develop a program that helps educate those borrowers in being able to get them qualified for loans, and then provide additional resources for down payment to break down those barriers. So that journey to homeownership can be it's a deferred loan. It has no interest, no payment. Any deferred loans that we have, they're just due on sale. If market goes to crap and the values drop and somebody goes to sell and can't pay off the lien, we're going to write it off. We're not going to hold anybody hostage. Okay. But that journey to homeownership can go up to $15,000 if it serves some of our core Des Moines neighborhoods, basically areas that were impacted by development and redlining, things like that. So they will register. We have 2 classes a month where borrowers get in. They register to learn about those barriers. Once they do that, they get out, and then we just add those things to other programs. Historic West Des Moines Housing Fund. That's $2,500 to $10,000 grants or forgivable loans as funds are available. And then Polk County, last April, we got $5 million from Polk County. And we launched that down payment assistance program in May for borrowers that were below 80% of the median income limit anywhere in Polk County. And it was $30,000 deferred loans for those customers. We went through 140 some reservations in 28 days. So that money is gone, but now we are already starting to see things where somebody moves, does something. If we get that money back, those funds get recycled. So from time to time, we might get funds in. It's like, okay, hey, does anybody have a deal sitting here? Yep, I got a family that could benefit from this. We'll take and we will add those funds back to let them utilize those funds. So that's why we wanted to do it in a revolving loan, deferred loan fund, because at some point in time, we will get those things back where we can reinvest those dollars to help another family. Okay. Hold on a minute. Go back in a minute. I'll just say one more thing about Polk County. So at the same time this came out, we also had another pot of money that came out to help borrowers who really struggled with getting things done to the house where they had critical repairs and they really didn't have any other means to get repairs done to a house. So as a community, we partnered, and I run the program, but we partnered with all the other housing agencies in Des Moines. Habitat for Humanity, Polk County Housing Services, Emergency Repair, ION, Improving Our Neighborhoods, Rebuilding Together, and then West Des Moines, the Metro Home Improvement Program. So we sit on a committee that we meet every other week. And if we've got people in Polk County that meet the income limits and have critical repairs that need to be done and they don't have a means to do it, we don't want that property going into further disrepair. And we also don't want to end up somebody being homeless or something else. So what we can do is we can utilize up to $50,000 of deferred loan funds that's deferred for 20 years. After that 20 years, it can become forgiven after the next 5 or 10. So I will tell you that I've had 3 customers that have bought houses in the last 6 months where single moms, they buy a house, there's a lot of work to do. Maybe they're up against the debt ratio limit. I need to find a way to get more of these funds forgiven that I don't have to money for a payment. So we have used, we just had a young mom, first time home buyer, daughter at home, bought a house on the south side of Des Moines, paid 75 grand for the house. What do you think the condition of this house is in? Pretty rough. We put $96,000 of investment into that property and repairs. The appraisal came in after improved more than what the total acquisition was, so our value was supported. She got dollar for dollar back on everything she put in. Not only did she use all of our down payment programs, things like that, but we were able to pull in about $38,000 of help through the Polk County Large Renovation Program to make this thing work. She had almost $72,000 of assistance layered in to create that homeowner. So if she didn't have that money, she's not owning a home. That property's still sitting there in disrepair, and it saved her almost $700 a month in payments. So that is sometimes the impact of what some of these things can do and how we make a difference.
So when you were layering like that, what was the number of days of completion from start to finish?
We got her done actually in 58 days. Yeah.
So in a situation like that, she was buying a $75,000 house. Was she buying it knowing that she was going to get all this assistance, or did she buy it and then come to you after the fact? Like
She bought it knowing we had a lot of stuff to do to the house. So when we got the inspections things done, she ended up using a preferred vendor. We pulled in maybe 1 or 2 small contractors for a couple other little things, but we ended up doing an energy audit. She took advantage of our energy deferred program, a lot of down payment assistance programs. We got money from Polk County to offset the amount of work being done because we could only qualify her for so much. So we pulled all these things in and made that work. We've still got about $3 million left in that bucket. We've got until I think the end of 26 to get it all done. But all of the housing agencies, like even Habitat for Humanity, they'll bring cases to use funds to help borrowers as part of their property rehabilitation program because they're capped at 6,000 and you just can't get much done with that. So does that make sense to everybody?
How did they save the money monthly? Did you say $700 a month? Something like that?
So if you back out all that subsidy that they received, that 72,000 in assistance, that was a difference of about $700 a month in that borrower's monthly payment if they did not have that available.
That makes sense.
Then she doesn't qualify to buy a house. Okay.
Terry, do you still have in the rehab loans, do you still have a like 3-to-1 ratio, that kind of thing? It's like that's much money has to go in to get this much money part of it?
So your renovation can be a small amount, it can be a greater amount. Our average is just under 30,000. I've had people come to me that have bought houses in Beaverdale and just come to me and said, I want to put new gutters and gutter helmets on my roof because I don't want to clean out gutters from all the leaks. Okay. So if there's nothing else to address, use our program and do that. Then we fund the program.
But there's not the ratios anymore.
No.
Early on, I used it and it was $1 for dollar match.
Okay.
Then later on, it was 2-to-1. Then it went to 3-to-1.
Yeah, don't have those ratios.
Those aren't there anymore.
Nope.
Okay.
It's just we
They were
lend.
cumbersome, if, you know.
Yeah,
They
nope.
got cumbersome.
We lend up to 95% of that after improved value based on the purchase plus the renovation cost or the after improved value, whichever's less. And so sometimes just depending on condition of house, what you're doing, you might only get, you might not get very much return on your dollars. You might get 30 cents. You might get 100%. It's just every property's going to be different.
Lance, were you asking about like after it's already purchased, like as
Yes.
a current homeowner?
Yes.
So you're talking about improvements on a home. So you don't, I know what you're talking about because we
Yeah.
considered using it, but we only qualified for like the 25%. So we had to spend 40 in order to get 10. from NFC to do improvements.
That is it. That is when we are in a secondary lien
Yeah.
position behind somebody else's mortgage.
Yep.
Then your forgivable money is calculated different. You're not just gonna get 10 grand, your first 10 grand
That's what
out,
he was talking about.
out of the gate.
That's what I was talking
Oh,
about. It's
okay.
like, own the home already, need to make improvements.
So if you own the home already, you need to make improvements, then your forgivable amount is based off of size of the project as it relates to that household income. And then that forgiveness is either 25%, 33%, or 50% up to 10,000. So for somebody that was making in the family, let's just say that there was just husband and wife and they're over 100 grand a year. They're gonna be more than 80% of the median income limit. So their forgiveness is gonna be 25% of whatever those bids are. So if the bids are only 20 grand, they're gonna get 5 of the 10 in the loan forgiveness. If they're 40 grand or above, then they're gonna get the full 10. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep. And so that's kind of how that will.
Yeah,
will
so
work.
that's still the same. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The problem that we run into a lot, and I get calls every week, every single week. I'll get calls, hey, my realtor sent me back over here to call you guys. I just closed on a house 3 weeks ago. I have all these things I need to do to the house.
That's
What is
It's too late. I can't help you. You have to be there for at least a year before you're going to be eligible to come back to us for assistance. But if you come back to us in a year and you went and did financing elsewhere and you got down payment assistance from IFA, that complicates it because now I have to pay off that IFA down payment assistance loan. I might not have the equity to do it. So it gets really tricky, and it's much easier and much more beneficial to the borrower to do it up front at the time of the purchase. Not to say that we've not done it because we get them all the time, but I will tell you, I probably get 6 to 10 calls a month from people that buying in our neighborhoods and have things to do that I can't help them. So that's why we set it up that way. Okay, here's your income limits. So again, this is where those income limits were, Lance. So that 80% for 2 people was at 72,350. If they're over that in a secondary position, that's where it would be 25%. If they're below that, but above 50, it's 33%. If it's below 50, then it's 50% up to 10 grand.
Is this adjusted taxable?
It's just the gross income.
Oh, it's gross. Okay.
Yep, gross income. You can go on from that. How are you doing on time? Okay. Okay. Let's see, forgivable loans. We kind of already went through that a little bit, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that unless anybody else has got any questions. But again, any programs that borrower can qualify for, and this is why it really works well if we can get them up front before they start their home search. Come in, get educated, talk to us, find out what you qualify for, what you can use, how it's going to work, and then start your search. Because then we're going to have a really good idea of what programs we may or may not be able to use, what we're looking at to help strengthen the property, if they're out there looking, hey, this is the price range you want to be in, because when we look at qualifying somebody, it's not just a purchase price, that purchase price or that loan amount is going to include everything that we're building in for a maximum amount of repairs that they could do based on their qualification. Okay? Go ahead. So the deferred loans, again, we just talked a little bit about the Polk County large renovation down there at the bottom. I want to spend just a minute on our Energy Advantage program. So we touched on it a little bit when we started the class today, but we launched this about 18 months ago, started working on it about 2.5 years ago. And so people, when they go in to buy homes, they don't really understand that their house can sometimes be a health hazard. It can create health issues. So what we've done with the Energy Advantage program is it's a deferred loan. They can get up to another $10,000 to offset the cost of any Energy Star related equipment or improvements that we're making to the home. So we use Red Fox Inspections. They will do an energy audit on the house. So they'll go out, they'll do an energy audit, they'll do a blower door test. We'll get a report back. When we get that report back, we go through it and assess what the needs are, and then we share that with the borrower. So if the borrower is doing anything to replace windows, we just make sure that the windows are Energy Star rated. We use federal funds, so we have to document those things. But we'll come in sometimes and a lot of these houses lack weatherization and improper insulation. So we'll come in, we'll insulate attics, we'll do weatherization, we'll insulate around the rim joists. We might put in an exhaust vent fan in that rim joist area to take moisture and humidity out that's set to a little preset thermostat, so it measures the humidity in the air, because you don't want to create a humidity issue that could cause mildew or mold. See that a lot in like crawl space encapsulations too. You see that quite a lot. But then, where does a home lose its air quality? It loses it through the roof, the attic, by not having proper insulation. They can lose it through drafty doors or windows. They can use it through heating things or cooling things that vent to the outside of the house. They can use it they can lose it around your plugs. So if you've got outlets that are on exterior walls, sometimes those outlets aren't sealed inside the wall. So those things can be air sealed to help reduce the amount of air leak that gets out there. What we have found is sometimes you might have a house that passes a radon test, but the house is really drafted. And so you're losing a lot of your energy because your house isn't ventilating the way that it should. But when we go in and we do these things and we tighten up and we correct or fix the ventilation problem where it's operating at a more optimum rate and the systems are performing the way that they should, we might inadvertently cause an issue with radon where the radon levels increase. And so you're looking at a radon mitigation system. So all of these things we can package in and we can do under our program here. So any additional costs that the borrower may not have been expecting to use when they're doing things to improve the health or the energy efficiency of a home, we will defer up to another $10,000 towards that. And I'm in a class right now, a certification class through the University of New Hampshire that will finish up July 9th. And it's a green home improvement course. So we not only understanding about different things, but the processes behind some of the things that you do on how to air seal, how does it work. We'll have a better understanding of how to coach and talk to a borrower through those processes. But again, that's just something that we use. If people want to layer that in, they certainly can. And so it's something that we've really leaned into hard. But you've got a lot of things out there with money that's going to be coming in to help funding with these programs. So,
So Terry,
Yep.
If somebody's looking at that program,
Mhm.
and I think I know the answer will be no, but is there any additional costs or application fees for the borrower?
like what?
Well, I'm just saying, you got a Red Fox inspection, somebody has to pay for the inspection, I assume.
It comes in as a cost to the loan,
Okay.
unless, again, here anyway, with Mid-American, we partnered with Mid-American Energy. So if that household is below 80% of the median income limit, Red Fox will direct bill Mid-American for the energy audit and it won't be charged to the borrower. Mid-American will pick up that expense because they like what we're doing with our program and the benefits it delivers. Not doing that in Cedar Rapids with the Lion Energy. I don't know what their issue is down there, but Mid-American's all over here. Okay,
Jerry,
great question.
I
Yeah.
know in the past, I've used the program. They tell you what you have to do first versus what you want.
Right.
And what if all these energy things eat up the whole 10,000 and you can't do it?
So you've got forgivable money, but you've also got deferred money.
So they can go on top.
Yes. So
Yeah.
somebody that's doing things to a house, if they're doing other things where they don't have any more forgivable money, I'm doing other things, but if I want to create affordability, I'm incentivizing them by deferring a portion of those costs. So instead of getting maybe 10 towards forgivable, they're getting 10 plus another 10 for any, if my energy related stuff is 15, they're going to get 10 of that deferred.
So is that time, and again, I'm going back to terms, how long do they have to pay that off? If it's deferred, is it deferred for 20 years? Is it
It's,
deferred for
it's
5
zero
years?
interest, zero payment for as long as they live in that home up to 30 years. Okay? If it's due on sale, or in some instances, if they do a cash out refinance that's non-home improvement related, then we will recapture it and they will pay that money off instead of taking it out to consolidate debt or something like that.
But you said something about switching that to a 10 to 15 year after the, you hit 20 years. I thought it could go to a forgivable for 10 to 15.
That's Polk County large renovation. So when we use Polk County large renovation for those borrowers that qualify for that, that typically is a deferred loan for 30 years. It's a 30-year term. It's deferred for the first 20, and then after 20, it can be forgiven over 5 or 10, depending on the amount of assistance they receive.
Because, I'm sorry, can I ask one more question?
Yep.
in regards to that?
Why we're here.
Okay, so what about, if they're 80, does, of their income, their debt to income at that time, that 30 years is up and they're gonna, or that 20 years is up, and if they're much higher than that 80% debt, or the 80%, or
Median.
household medium income. Will they then qualify for that, or they, since they qualified originally, would they be able to?
Well, they qualify at the time of when the loan is
Okay,
done.
so it would be.
So if the income grows over time,
It's fine.
we qualify them based on what's happening present day.
And then, so in a situation where someone goes through all this, then they've got, however much deferred and, forgivable out there. Let's say that somebody convinces them to refinance, right? That's outside of NFC because rates have dropped and they've called a 1-800
Yep.
number from the mailbox. Do they, people do it,
It
right?
happens.
Do they, like, what happens? Like,
So if it's a rate and term refinance because they're improving their terms, as long as there's not getting new cash out, we will subordinate these liens to allow that refinance to go through.
Okay.
Okay? If they're getting cash out for anything other than documented home improvement, I want to take a trip, I want to pay for my daughter's wedding, I want to pay off I want to consolidate this debt. No, you're going to pay this off
first. Okay,
Correct.
gotcha. Okay.
Correct.
So just cash out is the only time that it becomes a problem.
Cash out is the only time it becomes an issue.
Thanks.
And that is consistent with our subordination policies from a fair lending standpoint. So the only times that we waiver for them is if we got an emergency type situation, death in the family, just stuff like that, then we will review those on case by case basis to either release them or do whatever we need to do.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on. So the energy piece, a lot of this can be used for, again, weatherization, insulation, doors, windows, furnace, hot water heater, electrification, taking a gas stove to an electric cooktop, adding a heat pump, adding an EV charging station to a garage for an electric vehicle, installing solar, installing a radon mitigation system, exhaust vent fans, smoke detectors with CO2 detectors in there. All of these things can be done under the purview of our Energy Advantage loan. And we're looking to get funding done to where we can expand that and maybe take that up to 15 grand. Okay. Home buyer education. So all first-time home buyers need to take 8 hours of home buyer education. You all knew that. If we've got borrowers below 680 or use down payment assistance programs, they're still required to take the home buyer education. And then we will set them up with a one-on-one counseling session that usually lasts about an hour. That's with a HUD certified education counselor, and they're at Home Inc. over on 6th Avenue, just south of where our old office was. Go ahead. So pre-qualifications, where we want to start. Contact one of our LOs at the office, Richard, Bridget, Carrie. They want to reach out to me. I'm okay having conversations. I just don't originate the loans myself because I manage the team and the programs. But what we'll do is, they may be asked to provide some documentation. We can't require they give us anything until we give them a lending estimate. But in most cases, if we can get the income and the asset documentation get them credit qualified. What we like to do is take and get that over to underwriting and make sure that we've got a conditional hard credit approval. So if I've got, a lot of times what happens is somebody might apply and they'll get a pre-qualification letter, and it's nothing more than I take an application, you give me your info, I pull a credit report, I upload it through an automated engine through Fannie Mae. Yep, I'm approve eligible. Okay, here's pre-approval letter. That's how 90% of the lenders out there do it. Sad but true. So what we like to do is get the documentation up front, get it to the underwriter, so that if there is an issue, and a lot of the issues come in on the income side. It's either income or assets, moving money all over the place, Venmos, PayPals, Cash Apps, whatever it is, it's a nightmare. So don't move money around. Don't be making large deposits. But the other thing on the income side is somebody might say, yep, I'm working full time. And then when we get started and everything comes in, all of a sudden they wrote a purchase agreement. They come in, we get their stuff, we get the agreement, we're flipping this to a live loan and we're going. Now I get the pay stubs in, and the pay stubs show, well, you worked 32 hours this week, but last week you might have worked, 38. One week you might work 25. That is variable income. You cannot take an hourly wage person and calculate it at 40 hours a week to say, here's my monthly income. When you have variable income, you have to get a written verification of employment from the employer. And so that sometimes can be a little bit tricky and difficult to do, because when you send stuff out, you sometimes have to go through, third-party things that you get data built in, and then you get a report back. Sometimes you're waiting on an HR person to send you back a written verification, and they might not send you everything back that you've requested. So now you're back sending them, another request. So on that variable income piece, that is one thing that probably holds up or kills more deals than anything, is when somebody's not working a full-time regular. Okay. Credit reports, they've gone crazy. Our credit reports 2 years ago cost like $56. They cost $128 today. We collect 101. We made a decision when they went up last time, we're eating the rest. I know that the CFPB in Congress is looking at that as well. We're just being told that, it's just, the companies that provide the data to the repositories, it's costing them more money to do this stuff. BS. It's not. So right now, those credit reports, anytime you pull a credit report, they are good for 120 days. So you don't have to pull a new credit report unless that expires before you get to an actual loan that gets closed. Let's see. So when we send it to, underwriter, it's just, they're going to issue us a conditional credit approval. It's just going to be subject to the property and everything else that's going to go with it. But at least what we've done is we've seen the credit, we've seen the income, and we've seen the assets. Those are the three big things that drive loan approvals. We encourage them to get any home buyer education done prior to writing a purchase agreement. So it's self-paced. They can do it online. There's a link that we give them through Fannie Mae. They take it. It doesn't have to be done all in one setting, and it doesn't take a full 8 hours to do. But we do encourage that because it's one less thing you have to worry about in that loan process. So I've got some steps here. It's just of what we kind of do. We don't have ever a straight line. Nothing's ever easy, right? So just our roadmap here is just, you want to consult, you want to get your pre-qualification, create a budget, know what programs you're going to qualify for, how they work. Start shopping, identify your property. Once you've done that, you've executed a purchase agreement. You're going to get that over to us. Now you're going to apply for your actual loan. We're just going to convert the loan to a live loan that's going to trigger all kinds of compliance and regulatory timing issues with disclosures, whatnot. We're going to complete the property evaluation. So that's what you're talking about as far as required repairs goes. So if you guys think of a house as FHA or VA condition, think of that. That's kind of what we do. But our evaluation form is out on our website under the Realtor Resource Tools. So you can see what our evaluators or inspectors are going out looking at. It is not meant to replace a whole home inspection because that's not what they do. They are looking visual observation only. Okay. One thing that we used to do is if those heating cooling systems were more than 15 years old, we used to make it mandatory that they be replaced. We are no longer doing that as long as we can be supplied with documentation that shows these things have been serviced within the last 12 months and they're in good working condition. Then we're not going to require that those things be replaced. We would probably recommend it just because that's about the average lifespan. And sometimes when you're dealing with older systems, they're not as efficient and they work more, and it drives up your utility costs. But that's one thing that we do with that, so we do not require that. Once we get that report back, we share that with the borrower. Anything that comes back as a required repair item, then that has to be bid in the scope of the work in addition to anything that they're wanting to have done. So sometimes we might have somebody that comes in and says, I like the house, I want to buy it, the bathroom doesn't work for me, but I want to use this to remodel my bathroom. Or we might go through an inspection and you say, you don't have any ground fault outlets here, you need to add a couple. You got some paint issues up along the fascia, you've got exposed wood, rotted wood, whatever it is. We're going to pull those things in and make sure that those things are repaired as part of our scope of work. Repairs do not get made on a house until after we close. Borrowers have up to 6 months to get their projects done post-closing. If they need more time, we can extend those. Typically won't do it for more than a year because of our delivery requirements to Fannie Mae on that one. Okay? Yeah.
So with what you were talking about, the time frame that they have to complete repairs, do you have like an inspector come back, or is it like just getting documentation from the vendors?
Now we're going to get into that in just a minute. Yep. But once we identify those things, we get the bid secured. We'll adjust the loan, redisclose it if we have to. Then we place the appraisal order. We just typically say, right now, appraisals are easy to turn. 2 years ago, it took 8 weeks. So right now, it's the market's normal appraisals are getting turned probably within 7 to 10 business days at max. So we just tell everybody for potential closing dates, typically plan on a closing date 30 days from the day that you order the appraisal. I give 2 weeks to get the appraisal back. The other 2 weeks, it's got to go through QC. It's got to be cleared. Got to get everything prepped, sent in for final loan approval, get the final approval, off to closing, get your CDs prepared, delivered, out. You got the 3-day wait. So your time is going to be eaten up really quick. Okay. So once we close the loan and fund the loan, then all the repairs can start and they can get done. If somebody does their own home inspection, we would prefer not going back to a homeowner and asking the homeowner to make repairs. Put it into the scope of the work, into the renovation pieces that we're dealing with at post-close. If it's more than what you anticipated, you can always go back to renegotiate a price, maybe get a seller concession towards closing costs and prepays if there wasn't one there before. But it's easier to do it that way because if they try to do it, we have to get receipts, lien waivers, because those things affect title policies. And so it just creates a bunch of different things that we have to do. We've had times where that stuff has happened and we've not been told, only to find out at closing when we're trying to get a CD out that we've got invoices to pay on behalf of the sellers for repair work that they have done. And then that delays closings and people don't like that. Okay, go on, next slide. Next slide. So your bids, this is what drives everything. Because without the bids, I can't order the appraisal. The bids are going to determine, what repairs and improvements are being made on that property. And when that appraiser's getting it, I don't need to know that I've got round countertops and this color of flooring or that color of tile. I just need to know approximate square foot, what material you're using. They can gauge then from the bids, they can see the quality of the materials being used, which could potentially impact value, that kind of thing. So when we get bids, we're looking to make sure that the bids have all of the description, the detail of the work that's going to be performed, that it includes any labor, material cost, any permits that may apply or any applicable sales tax. That's what we look for in the bids. If we're missing those elements, there's some back and forth that we have to do to get those adjustments made. Okay? Let's see. So once we select those, they can select their own registered contractors. They just cannot do this on their own. We do not permit self-help work. Don't do it. It's too risky. Things don't get done professionally. They don't get done on time. If somebody gets hurt and they can't perform it, I don't have any funding for them to hire somebody to come in to do it. So it's too risky, and self-help typically is not permitted. We do have a preferred vendor if they want to use that. It eliminates some of the stress. It saves them time. We've been able to get things done sometimes in little as, under 40 days from start to finish. So it just depends on the property and what we're doing. See, you can go on next slide. So appraisal standards, we use all standard appraisal standards. Again, we work off of the after improved value. So that appraiser is going to get a copy of the purchase agreement. They're going to get a copy of the bids, the scope of the work. They're going to see what we're doing. Their job then is to go out, look at the property, see what work we're doing, and then find the comps that are going to support that in the neighborhoods that we're dealing. Obstacles, again, seller repairs outside the scope of work, poor contractor bids, not getting bids on time. Again, purchase offers where they're offering way too much for the property based on the condition that it's in. See that a lot. My king is my castle, right? And so structural inspections for foundation issues or termite. I just had a termite report came in last week, and there were signs of prior structural damage on a house that was previously treated. And so because the damage was identified in the report that was in more than one area, and it was in the house, it was in a detached garage, we had to get structural done. So the structural got done. They thought everything was all good and fine and dandy. Well, we went and closed the loan. They started work. They go down, they're updating electrical. They pull off the electrical panel. There are live termites, and there's extensive termite damage. It goes all along sill plates, up wall members, into the kitchen, in between the wall. It is, right now, I am dealing with a mess. So when we say that we need a structural, don't fight me. We try to avoid having those done. The only time that we can avoid a structural is basically how the report comes back. And if they say that there's visible signs of damage to the structure, typically that's going to trigger an inspection. Now, if it's in a detached garage and it's in a localized area, I can send my guy out and say, yep, I see it. I don't see any need for other repairs. It's localized. We're not going to do anything. We'll treat the termites. I'm not going to require a structural. But if I see it in the house, the detached garage, multiple areas, then that's where we're going to have one job.
Did you go back to the termite inspector and be like, bro, you better file an insurance claim? Holy cow.
Yeah, we see those a lot. I just had one in Cedar Rapids too, where, they were fighting like hell trying to not have a structural done. And lo and behold, we did have a structural done and went out there, and when they got in and dug into it, it was about $20,000 of work that needed to be done to floor joists, wall members,
Wow.
all kinds of stuff, because it was that deteriorated. So it's just, we're not doing it to make it more difficult. We're doing it to protect our investors, our collateral, our borrower. And if we do find something, we can deal with it, right? We can build those additional things, typically sometimes in the scope of the work. We can even build termite treatment in. The seller doesn't have to pay for the termite treatment. That can be made part of our scope of work, and it can be done after closing. So radon mitigation system, same thing. You got a radon test that you write into the purchase agreement as, hey, it's required, we want a radon test done. We're going to need those radon results. If it fails and a mitigation system needs to be installed, then it doesn't need to be done up front. We can build that into our scope of work. Sewer line replacements, foundation repairs, all of it. Yeah.
So with all that work that could potentially be done, sometimes, in my opinion, like borrower can't move in right away. With some of that, is that an issue?
Yeah, great question. So again, if we've got a house that is gonna require an extensive amount of work to be done, and maybe that house is not gonna be habitable by that borrower safe to live in, and so now, hey, I've got mortgage payments coming due, but I still need to pay rent for 2 or 3 months, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Yep.
So what we can do is, as part of that renovation work scope, if I know that, hey, once we close and fund, the project could start, but it's gonna take me 60 or 90 days to get it to a point where it's safe to move in and occupy. I'm gonna have 3 mortgage payments due at the same time. I can take those mortgage payments, make them part of my renovation work scope, and I can pay those mortgage payments from the renovation piece until the property is ready to be occupied. I can do that up to 6 months of payments. Make sense?
Yep. Yep.
Don't have to do that very often, but I've used it probably a handful of times in the last 5 years there.
So if they find that there's termite, evidence, is that a line item on the final closing for the cost of the inspection, or do you roll that into the funds?
We can roll it into the renovation work scope if we're gonna be the ones that are doing any remediation work or termite treatment. We just have to have the bids for it.
But what if they only qualify for $1,000 worth of something and then that, like, you know, they've got the radon, they've got the termites, you're saying don't do any of that before closing, you get a shitty furnace that needs to be replaced. They could get the seller to pay for all that. But you're saying don't have the seller do it.
We need to communicate that because there's certain things we do. So I just got one right now that's actually in closing. We got going on, all of a sudden we had the storms came through. Tree fell on the garage, damaged the gutter, the roof. Okay, they filed an insurance claim. Well, he had a large deductible. He was only getting like maybe $500. Well, it's not going to fix the roof and everything else. So what we did is we kept it out of our work scope, but we had them get us a bid for that repair, and then we did a seller holdback. So we held back from seller proceeds for that repair. And then we just basically tell the borrower, hey, before you start any other work, this has got to be done first. So you prioritize it, get it done. We ask for 1.5 times whatever the bid is. Once it's done, we confirm that it's finished. Any leftover money then gets mailed back out to the seller. Okay, so we have the ability to do that. Okay, all great stuff. Good questions. All right, go on here. So I wanted to show this. This is kind of powerful, I think. So what we did is we did an IFA loan, Homes for Islands, compared to an NSC Advantage purchase, and why this is important. So up here, we just used a purchase price of $200,000, no money down for IFA, $2,000 down if they qualified 1% from NSC. The IFA down payment assistance is now 5%, so they're going to get 10 grand for IFA to use towards down payment closing costs, right? I didn't have any of that, but my down payment assistance, I'm using 10.5. Let's just say for this example, I had $20,000 of work to do to the property. I've got 10,000 credit for forgivable repairs. So my amount financed, it comes in when we get our deal. I'm basing this off of an after improved value of 210. So I'm going to take that 210 at 80%, which is 168,000. That's going to be my first loan, up to 80%, no PMI ever. My loan is at 7.5%. I might be at a half point more than what a standard lender might be at. Okay, but I don't have any PMI, and they do. I do have a tandem second, and they don't. So my tandem second here, I could go up to 31.5 at a maximum if I had to, up to that 95%. That would be in the 289.84 monthly. So when you look at my payments on this scenario, my payment's just a little bit more maybe than what the IFA payment is, but it's still comparable. It's still affordable. And here's the big thing. At the end of the first 10 years, my tandem second is gone. That payment is eliminated. That means that their monthly payment is going to go down. Okay. it's gonna be cheaper than what their payment is here. But the big thing is that look at the balance in the first 10 years. So they're gonna have a remaining balance of 166,000 on that loan compared to 145,800 on mine. They got almost $21,000 more in equity in those first 10 years based on that scenario and how we structure that loan. That is helpful to you guys because it benefits the borrower. They've got money to upgrade to buy a different house. It helps you with resale. There's a lot of good positive variables in that scenario. That makes sense? Okay. So here again, this is just another little example of maybe how we structure a loan. And in this one, we used to purchase a 180. We just said our renovation cost was 20. We add in a 10% cushion to all of our bids. So if my bids are 20,000, my renovation cost might be 22 because I've got a cushion that we build in for unforeseen things that happen post-close. If that money doesn't get used, that contingency money gets reapplied back to borrower's principal when the projects are all done. If the projects are all done and they come in under budget and they got contingency money to use, they might come back and say, you know what? I was thinking about this and I should have done this up front, but I want to put new flooring in. Go get me a bid for new flooring. We'll do a change order and you can use your remaining funds to do another improvement. Or you could have it go back towards your principal balance. Okay? But in this scenario, let's just say there's my acquisition cost was the 200,000, but my value only comes in at 195. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 80% of the 195 and I'm getting to my first mortgage amount here at 156. Then I'm taking that at 95%, which this would be my maximum second loan if I needed it. Sometimes borrowers get so much assistance that we don't need to do a second loan at all. Sometimes we eliminate it altogether.
Where's the other 5% coming in though? Because I keep seeing 95%, but never 100%. Where's the other 5%?
So the 5% is the down payment.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yep. 80, 15, 5.
Okay,
First loan, second loan, down payment.
Got it.
And that down payment can come from borrower's own funds, a little bit, and then the rest could come from a gift or down payment assistance program. But they'll always have a little skin in the game. Okay? If we do have a tandem second, once we get the closing, we get the tax duration credit. Sometimes that credit gets used to lower what we finance on the tandem second, and they won't have as much of a payment, and they're not financing as much either. Okay, so next slide. So everything is done post-closing. We have a person in our office, Lindsay Stone, that the borrower will work with from the time they close to the time that the projects get done. So she handles everything with controlling the projects, making sure the work gets done, getting those post-inspection things completed. So what we do is borrower goes and gets a new roof. We get an invoice, the borrower gets an invoice from the roof contractor, said, hey, I need to be paid for the roof. They're going to give us a request for payment with the invoice. We send our inspector out. Yep, I can see the roof has been done. They're satisfied with it. We're okay to pay. And so we pay the contractor. We pay contractors twice a week, so we keep money moving. We pay contractors on Tuesdays and Fridays. So they're not sitting around waiting for monies. If we've got special order items, windows, roofs, or not roofs, countertops, things like that. Sometimes we'll do one of two things. The contractor can either give us a paid receipt showing that he's paid for those materials and they're ordered. And if they're special order, we're not going to wait till they're on site. We'll go ahead and reimburse the contractor. Or they can get us an invoice and we can pay the supplier direct for that product. So that is what we do with that. But we never front money to a contractor on any deal. They just don't get upfront money. Not going to give them money to get them put into a work schedule, and I can't start work for 90 days because they're not using your money for your project. They're using the money for other projects or themselves. And that puts everybody at risk, so we do not do that. They can do change orders. They just can't change the scope of the work. So the scope of the work was dependent on the appraisal and things that were done with the loan. They can't change that, but they can change contractors. So if they want to change a contractor, they put in a request for change. We just need to get a bid that matches up to the scope of the work. If they're getting it done, you know, if it's going to cost more money and we don't have reserve to cover it, that comes out of their pocket. If it's less than what we did with the loan, then they're probably going to be plus in the budget and probably have a little bit more money to use if something else goes awry. Anytime we do anything with a sewer repair, a plumbing or electrical repair, oftentimes we will add an additional 10% contingency into the work scope, because when you get into things with those two issues, you can blow through contingency money really quick. And so what we try to do is protect the borrower as much as we can, where we don't want anything coming out of their pocket. Okay, next thing. So this is just some photos. This was a kitchen remodel that we did, some before and after pictures, kind of turned out kind of cool. It's good to see the transformation on some of these things. Go to the next one. Some flooring that we did, some new flooring. Looks like a bathroom. Well, we'll go to the next one. I think that was a lower level finish that we did in a space that we created. This one's really cool. So I don't know much you guys know about attic spaces, but we get these little 1.5 stories here. We get these little attic spaces. Somebody might be using the attic space for a bedroom. However, in an appraisal, you're not going to get that counted as a bedroom if your ceiling height is not at least 7 feet for more than 50% of that space. So in here, because we adapted to that and the ceiling height is more than 7 feet, then more than 50% of space, if they did use this area for a bedroom and it had a closet or whatever up here, that can be used as a bedroom count in your appraisal, and you're going to have more value to that than you are of somebody that just goes in and finishes the attic space but doesn't have the ceiling height. So they get rated and they get valued at two different things. So it's kind of important to know, because we've done a handful of these where people have went in and finished the attic space, but they didn't get as much value out of it as what they thought, because it's not finished living space, it's finished attic space. So happy to share that. But just some testimonial things that we get here. We've changed some things now, so we're getting people at the closings. They're pulling out phones. They're doing Google reviews before it even moved from the closings. That's really helped us out there in the social media space. A lot of different reasons why. Yes, it does take a little bit longer to get done. We just tell everybody, give us 60 days, start to finish. Normally, we'll get stuff done below that. If we've got a tougher deal, sometimes it might take just a little bit longer, but more often than not, I think the last 24-month average, when I look back, we were right between 57 and 61 days, just on average closings. Some were much less than that. We had a couple that were just over that. Again, loan forgiveness, they don't get that anywhere else. We've got a lot of down payment assistance options. They build their equity faster. We stabilize neighborhoods. We prevent further erosion and decay. We update features, functionality, health, safety. There's just a lot of benefits as to what we do. And then again, you've got better resale opportunities. We do have investors that go out and buy houses, and they might leave one or two things off when they update a house. And then we will come in and they'll have somebody that wants to buy it, and we'll come in and we'll do the other two things and make them part of a renovation plan. Some of it can be as simple as maybe redoing the driveway. So we do things like that. So we will stop here and just open it up for questions, because that was a lot of stuff to be shared today.
I gotta take off, so I want you to just have you address that in those two neighborhoods and the
water lines,
the lead-based water
yeah.
lines.
So thanks for bringing that up. So the administration and the EPA basically mandated that residential properties that had lead service water lines had to be replaced. Those lead service lines had to be replaced within 10 years. So when they throw that out there, then what happened was there was a bill that came up here in the State House, I think it was a little over a year ago. It wasn't this last session, it was the session.
Yes.
They were looking at actually legislating that to where the property couldn't transfer unless they showed proof that that water line was replaced. if that was a property that was impacted by that rule, that got killed, okay? It costs 8 to 12,000 to replace those water lines. So there's just no funding for it. We've got about 20,000 properties just in the city of Des Moines that are impacted by that. And you're talking about a $200 to $250 million cost to replace all those water lines. So right now there's a pilot program where Des Moines Waterworks is paying to replace those water lines for those people in need that are living in either the Riverbend or the King Irving neighborhoods. So if we get people referred to them, they will coordinate through Waterworks to get those water lines replaced as part of the pilot program. We talked a little bit about Polk County large renovation in that bucket. We are in discussion with the county and the committee about if we have a property that's in one of those neighborhoods, can we use this money if a borrower qualifies to go ahead and replace the water line? Don't have an answer on that yet. That's up for discussion. I know that Congressman Zach Nunn had proposed a bill for $50 million of funding to help with that lead service water line replacement. So it is something that's on some people's radars, not everybody's. Des Moines Waterworks came to NFC about 3 months ago and found out what we were doing. I think somebody from the DMAR had referred them. And so we've talked to them about being able to use our forgivable money and basically help a borrower with financing to replace that using forgivable money to offset some of the cost. So we certainly can do that as well for anything that's in those neighborhoods. But that's a little bit about what's going on with the water line issue here in Des Moines. Water gets treated. These lines are highly corrosive, and when they fail, they fail. And so if they changed, what happened in Flint where they changed the supply of the water and things, it created a water crisis there. They're confident that they don't think that's going to happen here, but they can't rule it out. And they don't want the liability. So they're trying to find ways to get the water lines replaced. That answer that stuff?
Just
Okay.
want that.
Perfect. Thanks for attending today. Great to see you.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
showing up. You did great.
All right. Thank you.
Sorry, you guys.
Who else? What other questions you guys got? Yep.
You've got a loan started and someone loses their job. How long, this happens because there's a lot of layoffs.
Yeah, we know.
That they've gone through, identified the house, made the offer, everything else. The borrower lost his job.
Yep.
How long do they have to be on a new, I'm assuming you can just kind of put a hold on everything, but how long again after they find a job?
Yeah.
Can they reenact that? I mean, is there 30
Got one of
days?
those right now.
We do.
Yep. And so, fortunately for the borrower, was able to find work pretty quick. And so it caused a pause and a delay. Things that happen on our end sometimes is that your documents that you have on a loan, they have expiration dates. They're only good for so many days. So sometimes we might have to go back and we might have to update a bank statement. We might have to update this document or that document. So that is the first thing that we look at is, do we have any expiring documents that we have to address because of this? The next thing is, once they do get that job and we verify that maybe they've signed an employment letter, whatever it is, and we verify that, yes, they've got a job, they're started, I can't close my loan until they have received the first pay stub, whether that is a partial pay stub or a full pay stub. So once they receive that, then we can proceed with getting things to the closing table.
What happens when someone's hired on probation and they have to work their 90 days or something?
You're waiting. Yep, that's temporary employment. It's a probationary period and no way around that. Yep. And that's not an NFC rule. That is a Fannie Mae lending rule. All lenders have to follow that.
Kind of in the same vein as that, I have someone who actually is in a pretty bad motorcycle accident. So he hasn't lost his job.
Yep.
But he's going down to like disability. So it'll be some reduced income.
Correct.
how does that impact? Because it's a long recovery too. I mean, he's probably another month or so out from.
It gets tricky because you've got to get through your short-term disability first before it goes to long-term.
Yep.
Then when it goes to long-term, you got to provide a return date, or you got to show that it's going to continue for at least 3 years. Without that, you're kind of stuck.
But there's possibilities for it.
Yep.
Okay.
I have potential buyers who are moving from out of state to come to Iowa to finish up grad school at Grandview, and they both work in the food service industry and have for a long, long time. So income is kind of hard to prove, you know. I mean, probably, but
Based on what?
Just because like they're cash tips, like most servers don't report
Okay. Yep.
cash tips, right? But on his tax return, his reported income was 40,000 last year and 50,000 the year before.
Yep.
And he has good credit, but he doesn't have a huge down payment. And he's gone to a lender that I work with regularly, and my lender says, like, you know, he's like 6 to 12 months out because
You don't have any history of him earning tips at the new employer. That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So-
Well, he hasn't started a new job here yet. They haven't moved here from out of
Yeah.
state yet.
But when he does, the issue is going to be he might start, but if he's dependent on tip income as part of his qualifying income, you have no history of that from the new job, even though it's in the same industry.
Okay.
Coming from a different area, different, employer, those tips are going to vary. So without having at least your first year of that, you're probably going to run into some challenges.
Okay, and so then my client thought, well, what if I just get like a regular hourly job, which is fine, but now you're changing industries, and then what?
I don't really have big gaps in employment. So
Okay,
as long as I don't have big gaps in employment, we're just going to get a full 2-year history. If he's starting work in a new job in a new field, so be it.
okay, all right, cool.
Aren't there Orangeburg, Windsor Heights, and don't you have some sort of program for like?
Save Our Sewers program. Yep. So when you look at the lending map for the area of Windsor Heights that's not shaded in the light blue, if somebody has a sewer line to replace, we use a home improvement loan program to help with that sewer replacement. But again, my funds are very limited right now in Windsor Heights. When they're gone, if they don't fund us to continue the program, we won't be in Windsor Heights.
Is there
much
any
longer.
other place in Des Moines that has like Save Our Sewers, or is it just that area?
Well, back up. Household income. Below 80% of median. I might be able to take that to go to Polk County large renovation, get funding to replace the sewer. Most of your community programs, emergency repair services and whatnot, are tied to the most vulnerable people in the community, which are below that 80% income. So when you see the assistance for emergency repairs, whatnot, that's one of the first things they look at is do the income qualify. And then those typically are deferred loans or grants. Yeah, Polk County may even be able to Polk County Emergency Repair may even be able to help with that. Or they may bring that to our committee and present the case, and we agree to fund it through funds that we have. Yep. What else?
Maybe I dreamed this, but didn't you years ago have inventory homes at NFC homes that they were selling?
New construction,
No, it's just homes that either, I guess somebody maybe
defaulted on,
foreclosed
foreclosed on.
into your inventory.
We may have at one point, but we don't have any of those right now. Typically, if we get a property back through foreclosure, whatever it is, and it's gonna need other things done, typically we'll keep it. Zach, who handles our properties, NFC properties, he's our builder. He'll come in and basically we'll determine if we're gonna renovate that house to resell it. And then 2, he sells new homes. We build about 15 homes a year. We just hired a commercial lender in January. So that commercial lender is going to be doing some small tax credit type programs. He's gonna be working on multifamily type projects using those programs, starting out in Cedar Rapids, and then we're gonna bring that to Des Moines as soon as we get some deals under our belt, raise some capital. But there was another housing agency in Cedar Rapids called Matthew 25. We're a nonprofit housing agency. They were struggling with money to have the capital to be able to build 2 new construction homes for sale to low to moderate income buyers. And so they came to us, we got some funds secured, we used funding. We did a no interest construction loan for them to build 2 houses. And so those houses now have already sold. They've been built and sold within 9 months.
So if you were building, you wouldn't need any renovation funds to structure the program differently then?
So even at times where we've got somebody like Zach from NFC Properties builds a new construction house, we might have somebody that comes in and is like, hey, I want to add a bathroom in the lower level. We do the financing for that new construction home, and then Zach will just bid us for adding a bathroom in the lower level. They'll get the credit for doing that, and oftentimes those things are kind of done at about the time that we're closing anyway, so it's a seamless type process with that. Home Inc., we've done a couple deals with Home Inc., where Home Inc. has done the loan, or we've provided funding for it, but those borrowers where they, qualify for that criteria, oftentimes we'll do the same thing. We'll add a fence. We'll, maybe finish the lower level. We'll add a deck, a patio. Anything that we add as a renovation component, they can come to us to help them finance the house and add that component.
Are there recaptures on anything you do?
I'm sorry?
Is there a recapture on anything you do? Other than if you sell early?
Just on any deferred loans have recapture features. But any forgivable stuff, no, as long as they meet the 5-year marks and the forgivable things, those all get released, and we track those. So we track those every month. I'm signing releases a couple times a week. Who else? Anything else? Was this helpful?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we looking for like infill properties for your builder then, or?
All the time. I will tell you right now, so if you look, especially in those Invest DSM areas, how can I say this without being, they design the plan. So when we get a lot from Invest DSM and they'll say, hey, we got 3 lots, we want you to build houses on these 3 lots. Typically, we have plans that we'll use to build those houses, but if it's an Invest DSM lot that they want us to build on, sometimes that, they're going to build a little bit bigger house, a little bit more bells and whistles sometimes, and that's kind of what we do with them. So our thing is that we get a developer fee so that we don't lose money on that. But then if they need to subsidize the cost of the build, then that comes from them on the back end. So that's up to them as to what they do, because sometimes you're building in these neighborhoods, trying to revitalize an entire neighborhood. Sometimes you run into property value issues when you build a new construction home there. And so oftentimes, just because of that, they have to be subsidized a little bit in order to make sure that you can do that. But we build about 15 homes a year, and some of them are on those infill lots. But if there's an infill lot that we can build on, when the building code changed, you typically have to have at least a property that's got a 50-foot frontage. Anything below that, you're going to be really tough to build a house on.
What's an infill lot?
So it might be just a bare lot in a neighborhood that's had a house that got burned down, or somebody just had a bare lot, wants to sell a lot. Now we need to build a house on it. Yep. Yep. There were over 3,300, almost 3,400 homes that were identified by the city of Des Moines as nuisance properties. And they were basically scheduled to just be acquired and torn down. And so all of those things, when we get those back and that happens, then we come in and we build new houses, because it encourages revitalization and development into those older neighborhoods.
So how's that program different than Home Inc. Because I know they build, right?
Home Inc. gets subsidies to build their houses through the city, Des Moines and Polk County. And your borrowers cannot, your housing payment cannot exceed 30% of gross income for that borrower. So anything that you can't finance over that for a qualifying borrower, that has to be subsidized through home county, the city. They might have $50,000, $70,000, $80,000 of investment into that property that's going to be a lien against the house. But to make it affordable for that borrower, you're capped at how much you can finance. And that's where those things come. Yep. Doing one of those right now too.
My sister-in-law works there, so I know.
Huh?
My sister-in-law works at home.
Okay, yep, good partner of ours.
So if a borrower, we send a borrower to one of your loan officers, do they like look at their, like, you know, do whatever it is they do and then say, okay, well, based on all of this that you gave us, you qualify for this, this, and this? Or do they have to go in and specifically seek out
No,
a specific program?
no, we're gonna tell a borrower specifically what benefits and programs they're gonna be able to utilize. It's up to them whether or not they want to utilize them or not.
Even if those programs are outside of NFC.
What do you mean?
So there's
Like
some-
Invest DSM and the. energy
Invest
thing.
DSM works with us. The only thing that doesn't work with us is iPhone. I can't use iPhone.
Okay, so if somebody comes in and they wanna, you know, buy a house and they qualify for all the things that MC offers, and the house, like, then they find a house that's in the, like the Invest DSM area, and they want to also take advantage of that, does that change things with their approval process at NFC, or?
Not really. It's
Did you
just
help them with
another
that?
layer that we've got to coordinate between
Okay.
those departments. It was great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
much,
coming.
Larry. I have to run. Bye,
You bet.
everybody.
See you next week.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Did I answer that question?
Yeah. It's a lot of layers, you know?
Sometimes it's, you know, we got, I will say this, I was at an affordable housing conference with Congressman Zach and then about 20 people from Des Moines downtown here a few weeks back, and Yvonne Silvers, you know, at Bankers Trust. Yvonne's been around a long time, and she's really one of the ones that does it right, but she's good at what she does. And she looked right across at the table from me. She says, I have no idea how you guys do what you do, because I just did a homemade deal about drove me nuts. So it is, you know, this is all we do and we deal with. And there are some moving parts and pieces, but we try to do is we just try to simplify it. And just like, hey, you've got all this stuff going on, but let us do what we need to do. When we need something from you, we're going to tell you what we need, why. And so that's how we partner with those things to get those things in.
Right.
But, you know, we make a big impact. We do a lot of different things for borrowers in the community and the neighborhood. So
Can you give me an average time for the pre-approval process and then an average time for a standard closing? Like.
I would just say, for
$100,000
pre-approval type stuff, depending on volume, to get something, once you get something from the borrower and then you get it to underwriting might take 24 to 72 hours, just depending on what's in front of it. So it depends on how quick you get stuff and are able to get it handed off. Outside of that, you know, when we start a deal, we just tell everybody, write your purchase agreements, give us 60 days.
Okay.
Start to finish, because, and oftentimes we'll get something that's like, hey guys, I got 35 days and I've got 2 holidays coming up in between. I got Juneteenth next week and I got the 4th of July, and you want to close the day after. That means I got to have my bids tomorrow, because I got to get my appraisal work, but I don't have time to meet that deadline. Now, if I got something that, hey, I got to close in 45 days or 50 days, then what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, everything's going to move up and it's going to be compressed. So your bids, instead of being due here, are going to be due here. And so they've got less time up front to do the things that they need to do to get that work scope identified, to get their bids put together. And so sometimes that's the challenging part. But, you know, oftentimes if we've got 60 days start to finish, we usually deliver those deals more often than not. All right.
Thank you, Terry.
That was a lot to take in today. I appreciate you making the investing time to come here to do that. If you guys got any questions whatsoever, I do have some, a few materials on the table, some cards. All of my contact information for all my LLs can be found on our website, on our About Us page or our staff page. So reach out anytime you can. You got a listing in our neighborhood, you can get yard signs to our office or call us. Sometimes we have staff that could run out and place a yard sign for you. So a lot of different things that we can do, but just thank you for your support. Keep the deals coming. We're not here. We can't do what we do without you guys. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much.